Well, greetings and shalom. Welcome to Hebrew Rooted. I am Adrian Scott. It is another episode of Shekels for Your Thoughts, and this is going to be a topic that I have touched on in videos past, but I just recently was watching something, and it really, every time I get into this topic, it lights a fire under me, and I just want to talk about it again. So that's what we're going to do in this one, and it has to do with a particular concept. We read about this in Genesis chapter 6, and I'm going to read this in just a second, but it has to do with the description of the state that the world and everything in it was just immediately prior to the flood of Noah. So actually, why don't we just get in there and then we'll kind of talk about this. And part of what I'm discussing is I've kind of heard this from a lot of sources. It's not necessarily a bad take on it, but I do question how accurate the take is. And I like to be as accurate as I can manage. So that's, again, what we're going to talk about. So let's read a little bit here. I'm going to not read the entire chapter of 6 here in Genesis, but I'm going to pick up from, I'll pick up from verse 5 here. And it said, "And God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And it repented the Lord that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him at his heart. And the Lord said, I will destroy man, whom I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, and the creeping thing, and the fowls of the air, for it repenteth me that I have made them. But Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord." These are the generations of Noah. Noah was a just man and perfect in his generations, and Noah walked with God. And Noah begat 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. The earth also was corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with violence. And God looked upon the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted his way upon the earth. And God said unto Noah, The end of all flesh is come before me, for the earth is filled with violence through them. And behold, I will destroy them with the earth. So that is it. And I don't want to call it a misinterpretation, but I think where it gets fumbled a little bit is I've heard very much the concept of, they talk about how everything was filled with violence in the earth. Right? So it promotes this idea, it discusses this idea that all creatures and animals were violent in the earth. And I'm not saying that isn't true. In fact, I mean, it says that the imaginings of their thoughts were evil continually. Now I don't know how many thoughts beasts have, but it does say that, certainly about man. But the issue that I have with that comes down to just really, it's almost a logistical thing. I'm going to back up a little bit here. One of the biggest things that is a real catalyst for me, or a focal point for me, is personal accountability. Even before I was a biblical believer, personal accountability was a big deal to me. One of the things that just frustrates me so much is you see all these things going on in the world and all of these woes and trials, and you listen to people talk about it, and very, very often it comes across as it's somebody else's fault, right? I didn't do anything wrong. It's somebody else's fault that this is the way it is, right? And there's very little accountability. Like, start with yourself. Yeshua himself kind of references this a little bit when he talks about the idea of the speck in the log and everything, right? And he says, I'm paraphrasing here, but before you deal with the speck in your brother's eye, why don't you take the log out of your own eye? So deal with your own stuff first. When you're clean, when you're right with the Father, then you go and you can correct and reprove your brothers and sisters around you. But if you're not in a state of righteousness, then don't get involved, really. But it was that idea, like before you deal with the speck in your brother's eye, why don't you deal with the log in your own eye? Then go and help him. So it's that personal accountability. It's got to start with you. I've mentioned this before, but it always so profoundly hit me hard. There is a book, and it was talking about a particular fella, and his brother had a wasting disease that ended up killing him. And as he is near the end of his life, this poor fella, his brother is there with him, and he is praying to the Father. And his prayer was something, or it included something very close to the effect of, I'm sorry, Father, that we have done this to your creation. So many people will turn around and whenever something goes wrong, they're so happy to blame God. And you know why I know that? Because I used to be one of those people. Before I really accepted God and I accepted Yeshua and the gift of salvation and all of that stuff and started studying the Bible. That's why I like to say, even before I was a biblical believer, I would never have called myself an atheist because I apparently did seem to believe in God, even though I wasn't following him, because I was very happy to blame him for everything that was going on in my life or everything that was going wrong in my life. Never give him any credit for the good stuff, but always happy to blame him for the bad stuff. And never taking that accountability on myself that maybe this stuff is going so negatively because of what I'm doing, because of how I'm interacting with people around me, what I'm saying, what I'm doing, what the actions of my hands are creating this. And now I just have to deal with those consequences. I've made my bed. Now I need to learn to lay in it. And that's what I wasn't doing back then. And that's one of the big things that's changed in my life. And so it frustrates me tremendously when I see other people doing this. And that's probably why, because I was one of those people. So I get it. I understand that part. And so it really does come down to that personal accountability. And the reason that I connect it to this is because it is essential that we try to understand the Bible the best we can, knowing that our interpretation, our understanding is probably going to have some flaws in it. We are so far disconnected from the root culture, the people that wrote the Bible, the type of world and the type of environment that they were living in, that I think it's very hard to get an accurate interpretation. So all we can do, and you've heard me say this time and time again, is to do the best we can with what we have, knowing that it's not going to be perfect. But you know what? If your heart is in the right place for it, if your heart is pure with it, if you truly have a heart for God, that's what he's going to see. That's what he's looking for. He's not looking for perfection. He's looking for someone that has a heart for him. Just look at the narrative of King David, right? So we should try to understand it as good as we can. And it nags at me a little bit to see this interpretation when they say that all of man and creatures were filled with violence. Because to me, and I'm going to go back and I'm going to read one of the verses here. Verse 13 in Genesis 6, when it says, "And God said unto Noah, the end of all flesh is come before me." Why? "The earth is filled with violence through them." So the earth itself is filled with violence because of the wickedness of man and beast. Man in particular, really, I would say. But the earth is filled with violence through them. And this can change a lot of things, and maybe this is why this is such a big deal to me, because we go on about the judgment of God and everything else. But the earth itself was corrupt. It mentions a few verses earlier. The earth wasn't made corrupt, so something made it corrupt. Hello? This is personal accountability. Start pointing those fingers at ourselves, right? The earth was made corrupted. And once we corrupted the earth with our wickedness, the earth itself was filled with violence. And I bring this up because I propose a theory that, you know, what do we read about Noah's flood? We read that the fountains of the great deep burst forth. It rained for 40 days and 40 nights. The earth was filled with water and all this stuff happened. Could it be that the violence that was in the earth could manifest, such as earthquakes, tectonic plate shifting, volcanoes? Could that be some of the violence that the earth was filled with through us, through our wickedness? Right? And the point is that rather than just being God's judgment on the wickedness of man at that point, that we, in effect, brought about our own judgment through our wickedness. We created the environment. We created the variables. We put all the pieces together for that judgment to happen. We did that. Personal accountability. So when it's just taken that man and beast were filled with violence and therefore God had to wipe everything out, I just take a little tweak on that saying, yes, absolutely, it was God's judgment, right? It was God's divine judgment that was going to happen because, as it says, he was grieved that he had made man and he was going to wipe out everything and start again. It says that. There's no disputing that. That's pretty clear in the language. However, we have a role in that. Mankind has a role in how that happened and why that happened. Had we not been so wicked, there wouldn't have been this tremendous judgment and this devastation of the planet. And when we look outside of the planet today, when you look at those mountain ranges, when you look at the oceans, when you look at all of these different things, compared to the little bit that we get described of the earth before the flood, this is a junkyard. This is a wasteland compared to what was, right? And how can we verify that? Because it says at some point God's going to recreate it and bring it back to where it was. Why would he need to do that if it was already a paradise? He wouldn't. You'll just leave it the same. Maybe you repopulate it with new people that are righteous, but why change anything on the earth? But he's going to remake the heavens and the earth and everything because of this, because they are the evidence of this judgment. Noah's flood, the global flood, is evidence of this judgment. Judgment that became needed, again, because of our wickedness. I don't know why that's such a big deal to me, but again, personal accountability is a big deal to me, and I think it should be a big deal to everyone. So that is one thing. I mean, go in, read that bit of Genesis, certainly read Genesis chapter 6, check it out for yourself what it says. Don't just take my word for it. Yes, I know I read it from the King James, but add some context. Read a little bit before it, read some more after it. Make sure you have the right context. My challenge to all of you has always been, don't just take my word for it. I'm not perfect. I'm flawed. I'm human. Read it for yourself. It's about your relationship with the Father. I got my relationship with the Father, right? I am inviting you and I am encouraging you to foster your own relationship with our Heavenly Father. Get in that word, know it inside and out, as I have been trying to do. And just, be familiar with it. Be a Berean, as Paul would say. With that, I think I'll start wrapping it up there, but it's something I'm probably going to continue speaking about in future videos because personal accountability is it's such a big deal to me. And I mean, it does connect to something else I'm going to be talking about coming up. I'm thinking about how I want to outline this and do it, but it's this idea of the role of the church and how it compares to the Jews, we'll say. That's the common term that most people associate with, so I'll use that. But what is the contrast? Are they two different things? You've heard me talk about this one too, replacement theology and all of that stuff, dispensationalism. But all of those things really do come back to this idea of personal accountability. So maybe that's just going to be the simple title of this video. But having said that, I will wrap it up there. I don't want to be on this too long. I do thank you for watching. If you stuck it out to this point, I always like to ask, I know, but it does help. Give the video a thumbs up if you liked it. share it with others. And if you haven't had the opportunity yet, this is a great time right now. Hit that subscribe button to join the community. Make sure you get notified of all the videos that I'm putting up. The idea is to grow and get better. I would like to see, what I would like to foster would be more interaction on the channel. I'd love to field questions, maybe even have some conversations with people here and there, and, bring it up in video format and do it that way. I mean, everyone watching this video has things to say, and their opinions, your opinion counts. It matters. Right or wrong, mine, right or wrong, it still matters. It has a role. And at the very least, it should foster some discussion, right? This is one thing in the world today that I don't like is it's become this mentality of you're this or you're that, and never the twain shall mix. No, you can have different opinions. You can have different beliefs on stuff. You should still, at the very least, continue to have your different opinions, but have a conversation. Be able to talk. I don't just hate you because you have a different opinion, and I don't think it should work the other way around either. So that's what we're hoping to foster and continue with on the channel. So yeah, and you do that all by subscribing. Make your notifications to all if you want to know everything. Otherwise, I think the default option is what they call personalized. So YouTube will suggest things to you. But YouTube doesn't always like this kind of content. So that's why I recommend going to all. So that way you're not missing anything. And until the next video, I will see you then. I look forward to seeing you in the next one. And I will say shalom and bye for now. Have a great week.